What's up, Bills Mafia? I'm your host, Devin Long, and this is the Down South Bills podcast. Before we get started, please take a second to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast. Now let's get into it. So today I'm going to be discussing my instant reaction to the Bills' final preseason game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Bills finished the preseason 3-0. The final preseason game is over, and now it's time for the actual roster decisions. But first, I want to wrap up the preseason by discussing this last game that we had tonight versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of my highlights offensively is obviously Skyler Bell. Skyler Bell had 7 catches, 49 yards, 1 rush for 28 yards, and had a touchdown on that rush. It was an end around, I believe, in the third quarter. He was open twice on the first drive. Shane Buechele missed him once. I think that could have been a touchdown or a big play at least. And then he had that end around touchdown later. He had a couple nice plays at the end of the second quarter going into the 2-minute drill. And I just really like what I saw out of Skyler Bell. He played the whole game. I don't know if that's good or bad health-wise, but he did end up playing about the whole game, if not the entire game. But really like what I saw from the rookie. Glad he was able to get out there and get his feet wet. Trent Sherfield, he continues to make plays. I believe he jumped Mecole Hardman on this roster. I know we have to have a punt returner, but I believe Joe Brady said something that was very telling in one of his press conferences. He said the job of the punt returner is to get the offense the ball back. I don't think he's caring about the big returns. I think he ideally, obviously, you'd love the big returns, but if it comes down to rostering somebody who has sure hands like Trent Sherfield showed in the preseason versus somebody like Mecole Hardman who's going to be your punt returner and can't catch wide open passes, I don't know if that's a good thing. Trent Sherfield is a guy who's a very good special teamer, very solid special teamer, a good veteran, good teammate type of guy. And ultimately, I just think Trent Sherfield has jumped Mecole Hardman on this roster. That may be one of the things that's controversial in the things that I'm saying right now, because a lot of people, they like Mecole Hardman's upside, and I do as well. But I think Trent Sherfield has just shown enough to make this roster, and I don't think we keep 7-8 wide receivers on this team. Frank Gore, he had a really good game in the past game. I think the run was bottled up a lot in this game, but Frank Gore caught a lot of passes for a lot of yards in this game. So really good game from Frank Gore. He just always balls in the preseason. So if Ty Johnson needs to be out for a little bit in the regular season, I don't think it's a problem if we have to bring Frank Gore up for a game or two. Then getting into the defense, overall, I think it was up and down game for the defense. They had some really good plays, but they also had a ton of mistakes, ultimately giving up 27 points. Not as dominant as the first couple preseason games by any stretch. But again, they did have a few bright spots. Maxwell Hairston, after the game, Joe Brady said that Maxwell Hairston was in there getting a little bit of run because he didn't get any in the blue-red game or any of the previous preseason games. So Maxwell Hairston was out there getting his feet wet. He did indeed say that Maxwell Hairston is a starting corner. He said there's no battle going on there. Maxwell Hairston is going to start there. And I think that's something that I really love, that Maxwell Hairston starts there. I know a lot of people that's going to be controversial with some people because IGB did make a ton of plays in preseason. He was locked up in coverage. He made a ton of tackles. But I think this ultimately comes down to, hey, this isn't a Kaiir Elam situation. I think a lot of people have PTSD from that. Kaiir Elam, first round pick of the Bills, cornerback a few years ago, didn't pan out, was terrible. I mean, completely terrible. But I don't think Maxwell Hairston is that. I think Maxwell Hairston has dealt with some injuries, yes. And does he have a few missed tackles here? Gave up a touchdown in this game on a missed tackle, but I'm not going to overreact. I think it's definitely something he needs to clean up. And it's something he's needed to clean up since college, but he's made some good tackles. You can't just look at that and say, hey, well, Maxwell Hairston can't tackle, because I bet I could pull you up a bunch of film of Maxwell Hairston making a ton of tackles and being very aggressive in the tackling game. So I don't want to overreact to that, but he did give up a touchdown in this game, and it was bad. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, and he can get manhandled by bigger receivers sometimes, but I do have more faith in him than I do a rookie who's very handsy. But IGB, I do like IGB. He had some good moments in this game, and I think he's going to be a legitimate piece in this cornerback room. I think if anybody gets hurt, I think he's going to very, very much take advantage of some reps as a rookie if he's able to get in there. I just don't want to force that role upon him early and then have him fail and then try to go back to Maxwell Hairston. I don't think that's the correct order of operations at all. But Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin had another INT. Damar Hamlin had an interception last week and had an interception this week. Continues to make plays on the ball. I think he's very much beat out Geno Stone. I definitely hope he makes this roster over Geno Stone. I don't want Geno Stone anywhere near this roster, but Damar Hamlin had another INT. Was very exciting to see. Didn't mean to rhyme there, but that was cool. Mike Dana, I think he's beat out Javon Solomon. I think Javon Solomon does not make this team. I don't know. Mike Dana's just he's a pass rusher. I think he's pass rusher 5. He had a nice run stuff in this game, and I just think he stands out. I know he's playing against backups, but he's ultimately going to be a backup on this team, and I think he's just standing out. He's had too many plays that where he's popped, I think, to not make this roster. Tommy Doman on the special teams. Tommy Doman did do a kickoff in this game. He may have done all the kickoffs, but I did see him do a kickoff, which he did in college, and I think that's the interesting wrinkle. I think that honestly secures his job, like the way he punted in this game, and then Mitch having a terrible punt in this game. So I think Tommy Doman's our punter, and I think he ultimately may be doing kickoffs as well, which I don't mind taking a break off of Bass's leg so he can do all the field goals. But Tyler Bass was good on all his field goals and ultimately ended the preseason. I think 6 of 7, 93%, so that'll get it done. So Tyler Bass is doing pretty good kicking field goals coming off the injury. Don't wanna jinx him or anything, but got to give credit where it's due to Tyler Bass because I'm usually hard on Tyler Bass. Ray Davis in the special teams had a terrible muff. You can't have those. So as far as punt, I don't think he's gonna be our punt returner. I don't know if I'd love it if he was. I hope it's Keon Coleman. Don't think it's gonna be Keon Coleman. I think it's probably going to be the same person, Khalil Shakir, to be honest with you. But if not, I hope it's Skyler Bell, Keon Coleman, some sort of that rotation like that versus having McCole Hardman. I think McCole Hardman is definitely a candidate. I think he's a legitimate candidate. He may just be the punt returner going away. I mean, he's the punt returner on the depth chart that they've been releasing, but I don't want to look too far into that. But ultimately, the punt return job is going to be very, very interesting going into week 1 into Houston. But I think guys who helped themselves tonight in this last preseason game, really as much as you can help yourself in the last preseason game, was Skyler Bell, obviously my biggest offensive takeaway. Frank Gore continuing to have good preseasons, Damar Hamlin, and then IGB as well. IGB just continued to have a good overall preseason tonight. Guys who I'm a little bit worried about, Maxwell Hairston, that missed tackle. I still believe in him, obviously. You guys heard me go on a rant as to why I thought he should start, but just something to watch, obviously, his tackling. Because Jim Leonard is big on tackling. He said he felt like that was a big weakness of the Bills' defense last year, so he emphasizes tackling, so have to make those tackles in the open field. Ray Davis muffing that punt return. Ball security matters. Don't want to see him fumbling and muffing punts because if Ty Johnson is out, he's going to be the first guy in behind James Cook. And then Ian Wheeler. I mean, I'm not too worried about Ian Wheeler. He didn't have his best game, but the run was pretty much bottled up, so I don't really blame him too much for that. And he did have the game-saving touchdown, so want to give credit where it's due, so I won't say I'm too worried about him. I think he's a guy who's going to be on the practice squad, hopefully, so yeah, there's that. But ultimately in the preseason, we finished 3-0. It obviously doesn't matter too much for the regular season, but I like that we got 3 games of evaluation, and now the hard part begins, the 53-man roster decisions. And so transitioning into my 53-man roster projection, so I'm basically just going to give you guys my 53-man roster projection. You guys let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of this, who you think should make the roster that I have off the roster. This is just basically what I think based on the preseason and the training camp and all of the reports that I have received. So at quarterback, I think this one's pretty obvious. I have Josh Allen and then the other Allen, Kyle Allen. At running back, I have James Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson. I don't think there's too much explanation needed there, as well as the quarterback room. I think everybody, if not, maybe a few people disagree, but I think for the most part, people will ultimately agree with those positions. At the wide receiver spot, we have DJ Moore, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer, Skyler Bell, and Trent Sherfield. Yes, I do think Trent Sherfield makes this roster as a great special teamer, and then a guy who can get in there and block and maybe catch a few passes when needed, but definitely a good blocker on offense, a good special teamer, and then a guy who showed to have sure hands this preseason. So I think Trent Sherfield makes this roster as wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, wide receiver 6, yeah. And then tight end, Kincaid, Knox, and Hawes. I think that's pretty self-explanatory as well. I think everyone will agree there, unless you think we should roster 4 and not keep a fullback. But I do think Ben Van Sumeren makes this roster. Left him out of the running back room, but I do think we roster a fullback in him. So then getting into the offensive line, Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Tylen Grable, Osiris Torrance, Austin Corbett, Lloyd Cushenberry, Alec Anderson, Connor McGovern, and then Cedric Van Pran-Granger. So that's 9 offensive linemen that I have making this roster. I think Jude Bowery's a little banged up, so I think they may just, red shirt Jude Bowery and then have him come back next season, because I don't think he's technically ready this season. Chase Lunt, I'm kind of hoping he makes the practice squad. Same with Nick Broker and Armaj Reed Adams, but I'm not too sure on that. But I don't think we can roster more than 9 offensive linemen. Getting into the defensive side of the ball, defensive linemen, Ed Oliver, Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, and then Greg Gaines. I do have Dwayne Carter missing this roster, but it was a little tight there. And then Phi Mathis is going to be suspended, so when he comes back, I think he may get back into the rotation. Maybe he's just some guy who we forget about, but he is suspended, so he's not going to count to that initial 53-man roster. And then also, I don't know if I mentioned Greg Gaines, Zane Durant, and Landon Jackson. So that whole list was Ed Oliver, Deion Walker, T.J. Sanders, Greg Gaines, Zane Durant, and then Landon Jackson, who I had making for basically that inside defensive line. Outside linebacker, Greg Rousseau, Bradley Chubb, Michael Hoyt, Mike Dana, and then TJ Parker. This is where I'm a little torn. I think Mike Dana's done enough to make this roster, but if he doesn't make this roster, I wouldn't be surprised there. But I do think Greg Rousseau, obviously, Bradley Chubb, obviously, Michael Hoyt, and then TJ Parker, obviously. I think Javon Solomon maybe is on the outside looking in, especially with how the numbers are. How you have to crunch the numbers here. I think Javon Solomon's on the outside looking in, just because of how good Mike Dana's playing, though. Because if Mike Dana's on the roster bubble and he's playing better than Javon Solomon, I think he pretty much has that, or it's just 4. But I think there's 5, and I think Mike Dana is the 5th. Inside linebacker, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Caleb Alarms, and then Buffalo Joe. I'm not too sure on Buffalo Joe versus Keontae Jenkins. I think Keontae Jenkins has been playing better, but Buffalo Joe has that NFL special teams experience, and he has that in-game experience. He just has more experience under his belt and that Buffalo connection. I think he may ultimately make this roster over Keontae Jenkins, but I think those guys are fighting for that one roster spot, and right in this position, I'm just gonna choose Joe because he's the guy who's been there. At cornerback, I'm going to take Benford, Hairston, IGB, and D. Alford. Yes, I'm leaving off Kanai Walker and Toriano Pride. I know a lot of people think Kanai Walker's going to make this roster, but I just think that D. Alford could kick outside and Jordan Hancock could play that slot, and I think Kanai Walker could make it to the practice squad. Maybe he can't. Maybe some team's going to jump and put him on their 53, but I highly doubt that. I think Kanai Walker makes it back to our practice squad, and I think that's the best place for him. I think it would be great if he was on the 53-man roster. I just think the way the numbers crunch, I don't think he ultimately makes the 53-man roster. But I could be wrong on some of these. You guys let me know where you think I'm wrong, and then in a few days we'll find out. But then we'll get to safety. I think we have Cole Bishop, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Kilgore, Hancock, and then Damar Hamlin. I think Geno Stone is on the outside looking in, and I really hope he is. I think he's had a pretty terrible preseason, and Bengals fans don't like him. Usually when a fan base doesn't like you and you're a starter, they have a terrible defense, but he was part of the terrible defense, and he has had a rough go of it in the preseason against backups nonetheless. So don't want Geno Stone anywhere near this roster. But lastly, getting into the special teams, Tyler Bass, Tommy Doman, and Reed Ferguson. I think Tommy Doman won that punter job tonight, and the other two are pretty obvious because they don't have competition. So Bills finished the preseason 3-0. But the record isn't what matters. We got a pretty good look at the depth, and now we wait for the roster cuts. I just gave my 53-man roster projection. You guys let me know where you think I'm wrong, where you think I'm right. But ultimately, we're gonna see what happens in a few very, very short days. But once again, please don't forget to like, share, and comment on the podcast if you enjoy the podcast. It really, really helps us grow. And as always, go Bills.